There
Not
we
live,
go.
not live. Anyway, okay, sorry to once again my legions of followers on Disembedded. Haven't figured out all the technical aspects of this yet, but we are recording this. We will upload it, and I will just start by welcoming our wonderful panel here. Today, we've got representatives from 3 departments at HKU here to unload all of their hot takes about AI in the classroom, in research. And I think we're going to start with the most bombastic and negative, and then we're going to continue until we get to the most decent and well-meaning. No, we're gonna start with Ben, who I think, and so we have as a like conversation piece, and I'll share this, share my screen. We have as a conversation piece.
Walter
Let's
Benjamin's The
see.
Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction.
No, not that. Don't be ridiculous. We
Wait,
have fresh, hot off the press, hot off the Luddite press. No, hot off the press, a statement by Progress in Human Geography, which is the review article journal in our field, my field and Ben's field, human geography, talking about what it's been like to edit this journal since generative AI came out, and announcing that they will remain committed to what they call interpretive reviews, which I really think of as like author helmed, auteured reviews. They will reject kind of meta reviews. They will require transparency about how AI is used in preparation, writing, and article formatting. And I think most concretely, they expect for AI writing to be AI assistance to be light. And I'm just going to search for that. So the word light. We seek to publish articles that should reflect only light use of AI in their preparation and writing. So I'm putting that on the table. I'm inviting Mr. Gerlofs, Mr. Ben Gerlofs, to speak. I have a few things to say about Mr. Ben Gerlofs, and then we'll continue with Mr. Wotherspoon, continue with Mr. DeFrancesco. Ben Gerlofs is my colleague here in geography. He's an urban, cultural, political, and historical geographer. Um, Studies neighborhood change, urban social movements. His book, Monstrous Politics, I think is admirable for anticipating the topic of gentrification in Mexico City, which Ben was probably the first to describe to me in like social scientific terms, and then thereafter I just heard a lot of people talk about it. So Ben, don't let this conversation suggest otherwise. Ben does know how to find hot topics, and and here he is, Ben.
hey, that's a very, very, very generous introduction. You, you want me to make a statement on this statement?
No,
I,
no,
I
no.
did not
Well,
prepare
Ben,
a
why don't
statement.
why don't I start? No, no, no. I have one more thing to say about you to introduce you, and that is that you are an editor of a section of a very good journal that I work with, the book review section of the Journal of Urban Affairs. So, like the editors of Progress in Human Geography, you've probably noticed generative AI. And so, can you sympathize with their editorial?
Yeah, most definitely. And I'll say just on that side of things that our section of the Journal of Urban Affairs doesn't currently have its own unique AI policy. The journal has a general policy which involves the use of AI among other things, and the publisher, of course, has its own set of policies around these things that applies across outlets. We've discussed for our own guidelines with book reviews at JUA, we've discussed having some sort of statement on the use of AI, but we currently don't. But we do encounter it a lot in much the same way that I imagine the editors who wrote this statement for Progress and basically everyone else who does any kind of editorial work these days with academic publishers does, which is to say, we mostly suspect that we encounter it. It's very difficult to really know, right? We have a sense that something is AI generated or it feels very artificial or something like this. But these are incredibly difficult things to know, and they're super dangerous accusations to make, of course, of anyone's work that they've done. You suspect that they've done something they're not supposed to do, especially when there's not a policy that says you're supposed to do this and not supposed to do that. And so we feel like we see a lot of influence of AI, but it's not something that outside of conversations between the other book review co-editor and myself that we really discuss very much with authors or anyone else. So I do understand where these editors are coming from, and I think they've made a really bold statement. I have lots of
I
questions,
mean, it does.
but
So you sympathize with them, but it doesn't sound like you're kind of where they are. I don't sense like a lot of frustration in your voice. But then when I'm reading this statement, it's like I think boiling over.
I'll say
And
I'll say it from
yeah,
another, like as a peer reviewer, for instance. I have a pretty different reaction to this as a peer reviewer than I have had as an editor. I encounter what seem to be much more blatant abuses, let's say, or inappropriate uses, to use the language that these editors use in this statement, of AI in articles that I'm asked to serve as a peer reviewer for. This is more and more common all the time. I feel where something is to my eyes, and I would never say this about an individual piece that I was discussing, but we see a lot. I see a lot of them as a reviewer that, to my eyes, are really blatantly inappropriate uses of generative AI. So in that realm, I feel the frustration more than I have so far as an editor, at least. My experience has been not quite so frustrating on that front as an editor, but increasingly frustrating as a peer reviewer, I would say.
awesome. But then I guess, and maybe this will be how we bring in the other two gentlemen. As an instructor, I'm sure you've encountered it just like everyone else. And where's the frustration meter there? And how do you kind of square your different levels of frustration in each of these contexts?
A couple things to say about that. On the one hand, I have tried in some of my bigger lecture classes to do things that seem sort of like what these editors are doing here, like requiring a certain kind of disclosure. Um, I've had assignment submission agreements that I've used in my classes over the past few years. They're like increasingly what's the word I want here? They seem increasingly aggressive. These statements that I draft and then ask my students to
Yeah.
sign, saying they've not done this and they've not done this, and they put their name on this piece of paper 4 different times. I have not found this to be a terribly fruitful way to try and police the AI use that students are sending my way. I don't have a better way. I've talked to lots of instructors about what they do in their own courses, and it feels like instructors across the board are fairly frustrated with how students use AI these days, especially in writing, I think. But
Yeah.
in my own courses, I see this in how they study for exams and other stuff. They come to me with a piece of AI generated text about like a key term that I've lectured on, and then they read this to me and then ask me like, is that right? Like what's wrong with this? I feel is not a very fruitful way to learn course content, and I find it kind of a frustrating way to interact with students as well. It doesn't seem very earned. Like this stuff that they've brought to me is not their own idea that needs to be like worked on,
Yeah.
and and challenged. Rather, it's a piece of text that they have basically no relationship to, and they're asking me to interact with it and tell them whether their
Right.
interaction with it is correct or not. This I find super frustrating. So in my own teaching, I'm really struggling with how to assign writing anymore to especially like lower division undergraduate courses. What use is there in assigning a course essay anymore if the majority of my students will simply use ChatGPT or Claude or DeepSeek or something else to produce the ideas and the initial draft and any subsequent drafts, and then they'll simply tell me that they didn't do that, or they'll use language that one of those programs generated to describe how they used the programs to arrive at this result. I don't know how to address that problem really, other than in my most frustrated moments, I suppose I just retreat from assigning things that are AI capturable in so obvious a way. I don't think that's a very satisfying pedagogical response. I'm super curious
Hmm.
what others think about that.
Well, maybe that's a good opportunity to bring Tim in, and I'll just introduce Tim very quickly. Tim is a bona fide astrophysicist, knows a thing or two about complex systems as applied to astrophysics. He mainly at HKU leads a number of courses and tutorials in the Common Core program, which is a very difficult program to teach in because you have to teach to every type of student. We require all students to take a lot of courses in this program, and he's very seasoned. I call him the dean of the Guilo. That's the dean of the Westerners here at HKU because he's been here longer than the rest of us. And so Tim, uh, do, where's your frustration meter at? And is it similar to where Ben's is when he's describing his teaching and grading?
Oh, it's similar. Yeah. I'd say my frustration with it is always increasing. So I'm fortunate enough that I don't usually assign writing or deal with student writing, at least on like the 500 word plus scale, uh, anymore. I was doing that for a while, and it's exactly like actually I'm very uncertain why we even have humans in this. And actually, I really enjoyed the piece about from the editors and the progress in human geography. I mean, these editors, I don't know, they're screaming at the tide for sure, right? And hoping it won't come in. But I think they're absolutely right. What I took from their letter was that they want to do a human activity and the humanness of the activity. Like they talk about doing close reading or deep reading. Coming from science, this is not something I really do. Uh, and wanting to interpret what's going on, like something where the author is bringing their own interpretation. This is a very human, artistic, creative endeavor. I don't know why we're using AI for this, right? I don't know
Mm-hmm.
why. I feel like the promise of AI should take me out of the dullness of my work, but this is the work that we're meant to be passionate about and creative about.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the work that AI is coming for. I hate this. I'm so frustrated with this. I'm still doing my own dishes. I'm still doing my own laundry, right? But the things that I want to do, like music or art or reading, AI is coming for that. I hate that. I hate that. For our students, I think what we're learning from our experience with our students is that the academic pursuit is not an end to itself for most of our students, right? The end for our students is a qualification, a grade point average, something along these lines, right? And I think as long as we are pursuing our lives in terms of metrics, like for music, how many listens we get on Spotify for our academic study, what kind of grades we get in the classroom. AI is going to be very good at, producing content that gets high scores because that's how machine learning works, is it creates content that gets a high score with some definition of score. And I think us are shouting are like, but the score is just a incomplete, incorrect way of judging the quality of the thing. There's a intangible quality of the thing. That's what we treasure and what we love. And I think that's correct. But this is not how the world works, right? We want to publish a certain number of papers.
Mhm.
We don't want to express something intangible to our bosses. We want to tell them that we have this H index we've published with these high impact journals. Uh, I think AI is going to win this game. I don't know. Is that a reasonable take?
I mean, there's a lot of really great stuff in there. I think what's really fascinating about your perspective, Tim, is you're representing the like hardest. And apologies to Giancarlo. I mean, he's almost there, but like the hardest of the hard sciences, and you're the one who's expecting from AI like liberation and the ability to be more romantic, think about ideas, and be more human, right? So like it seems
Oh
like you
yeah.
you want like social contract with the AI where you get to be liberated a little bit more. Like that's how you'll accept AI is to allow you to be more human. But like I think there's another scientific approach, which is like AI lets us do science better. Maybe you know I, we'll let you try that one on, and then maybe bring Giancarlo in to see what his perspective is.
Yeah. Also, when I read this piece from the Progress in Human Geography, I thought that this review article that they don't want is a really scientific review article. Is kind of the one a scientist might want. Uh,
Mm. I mean, but why would a scientist want that one, Tim?
oh, because
Is it
we're
just to
not.
get the H index? What? Sorry.
Well, no, because we want an efficient summary of other work, right? And we don't necessarily need someone to have a take on that other work. We just want to know what's been done, who did it, how it interacted with other work, right? And so what's the work? What are the connections between the work? If AI can do that, it'd be very useful, right? Or even using the AI to summarize a scientific paper might be quite reasonable compared to having AI unpacked something that I don't know. Uh, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but the informal word would be woo, right? But the scientific work should be pretty concrete in our target. Writing a scientific paper. My PhD advisor basically had me fill out an ad lib whenever he wrote a paper with me, a Mad Lib. So like we study, we find, and just
Mm.
fill in the blanks.
Uh, it was kind of
Yeah.
already AI. I mean, if you kind of like boil AI down to its like fundamentals, where it's just this like they identify structure in the world and then just kind of reproduces that same exact structure. It was like a little
Yeah.
algorithm, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So uh this should free up things, right? So in the world of science, maybe this AI use is okay. But I mean, in a scientific paper, where's the author's ideas, right? Where do those ideas exist? Uh,
Mm,
Giancarlo, I mean,
I am in the
you're the
throes
yeah.
active
of
researcher,
exactly that right now, actually. Yeah.
right?
So, I mean, for
Well,
me,
let's
I
just
think
introduce
go
moderator's
for it.
prerogative. Let's introduce you, Giancarlo. Okay, so Giancarlo, but just I think it's important background. in the unlikely event that someone else watches this, Giancarlo is about to get a PhD in geology. He's doing the hard science right now. And we were just talking before the stream started. He's like a model AI user for me as a relatively ambitious AI user. He was telling me things to do that I should have been doing. So like two things to know about Giancarlo. A, he really needs to get a PhD this year, and B, he knows how to use a lot of AI. And I think those two kind of work together, where like he doesn't really have the luxury of being like human with his technology. He needs to get shit done. So maybe we can get the get shit done perspective from Giancarlo, or deviate if I'm getting your perspective wrong.
I think there's definitely a balance that I'm trying to strike, right? And in part, I think that's been driven by using the tools and having, at least to me, as someone who's intimately familiar with a lot of the topics that I'm working with, having text, a response, an output, text output from a model, and reading it and being like, this is misleading. This is, or even in some cases, wrong. Right. So being very careful when you're analyzing data with AI, but also making sure that when you're putting something on a document, that your thoughts are your own. And so for me, at least, with the ways that I'm using it, when Patrick was mentioning that, I think you described me as a model user. What I'm talking about in there as well, right, is being careful with the data that I'm giving the model as well. And so, yeah, as I'm finishing up my work, I'm preparing a lot of data, I'm interpreting a lot of data, and I'm also checking my data against some other people's reported findings. And so for me, that also includes data obfuscation. So like if I'm giving it a large data set, some of which is data that is mine and I've not published, I might strip out data that I don't want a model to have. So in the case of the geologic work that I do, I look at a lot of river systems. If I'm giving it the exact sample location, right, and that's fed into a system and is kind of more broadly put in a model, and it can see the relationships between my samples, the locations, and the concentrations within the river water at that location, right? That can kind of be fed into other interpretations, and my data can get out if I'm not being careful with how I'm working with the data and the model. But also kind of going into how I'm using it and how I'm getting responses back that are incorrect, right? If I'm struggling with an idea, if I'm struggling with a concept, I'm looking for ways to reinterpret something that I have that I think that I'm thinking differently about than maybe what the literature might suggest a conclusion might be. I also have to go and check that as well. And so, a model recently told me that I need to look into sulfates and a connection with an elemental fractionation. And I went to Google Scholar because I think, right, it's like, okay, I've not read about that whatsoever. Did I miss something in the literature? Because, I'm reading so many documents per day and trying to incorporate that into my work. It can happen, right? Especially when you're trying to move quickly. And like Tim said, when you're trying to hit certain metrics, right? We are trying to move fast so that we can publish significant works that has a high impact factor. And you're trying to do that, multiple times, repeatedly, and maintain quality, right? And so if you're trying to do that fast, you might miss something. And so for me, I went to Google Scholar to just and to their credit, I think that this is an example of where AI can actually be very helpful. Is I can now use Google Scholar Labs where I can ask a question in a more native English or not native, natural English a way of phrasing what I'm looking for, and I can be very specific at what I'm looking for. And so I asked it to kind of show me if there's any relationship between this element and a sulfate. And it basically came back with stuff that was unrelated to what I was looking for in terms of a geologic context. And I went back to the model and I said, hey, like, I just looked for research papers on this. Where did you pull that suggestion from? Why did you suggest that in particular? And I'm not joking. The response was, oh, well, I based on this property and these kind of aspects of data that we've been talking about, this should be, what happens. But there was no literature to support a statement like that. And that doesn't mean that the model is wrong, right? That's maybe something that you can look into in the future, and you can go down a rabbit hole and look at that. But if I'm suggesting that as a conclusion for what I'm currently doing, without any evidence to support that, that's a really big claim that I'm making. And that's something that maybe I shouldn't be throwing out there without being able to check that claim, essentially. So yeah, data obfuscation I think is really important, but also understanding that, right, even today, and I think some of us might remember, right, when AI was first being kind of pushed on us as a community, a lot of the responses were definitely inaccurate. And I think that that's less of the case now. But to say that it doesn't happen, or to think that it doesn't happen, especially for new people writing and up and coming scientists who are using it a lot. Like I see my peers use it quite a bit. I obviously use it quite a bit. Making sure that it's my writing, that I'm putting the words on the page, and you might want to check it, say, hey, where's my argument weak? What am I being unclear about in my writing? That's one thing, but you do have to struggle with the text a bit yourself. Those are important skills that we need to have, because if we're losing that, then if we're losing that as a community, I think that we could be in for a difficult future as a society.
I mean, maybe this is a good opportunity.
We all had a rant there.
That's awesome. I mean, I think so you talked about there at the end and previously kind of this judiciousness you need, this like basically your skill of like maybe as a PhD student, at this stage, you would be regularly exercising critical judgment, like evaluating some approach a little bit, like you'd start to be reviewing articles, but not a lot. And now on a kind of like dozens of times, maybe an hour, you have to use that judgment.
Sure,
so returning to what Ben's saying, and then you talk about obfuscation, these other skills, what Ben's saying, like, Ben, do you think like there's a sort of social scientific, urban geography, human geography kind of version of where we can like train our students to use these models like with discernment? Is there kind of a path forward there where, instead of the student that you were describing coming in and just belching back something they got from a model, we're kind of figuring out how to train them to figure out the best responses and get the most out of these models? Do you see some hope there?
I don't, but I want there to be some. And actually, I was going to say earlier, and I should have said in response to your question about like a kind of frustration. Where's the frustration meter at with these things? But part of my own frustration with this is my own inability to envision how to better use this technology in my own work, but also for other people. I feel super frustrated by not being able to make this thing work in a way that I think is useful, and also by other people's inappropriate or poor or lazy use of these things, which I feel kind of pollutes the whole thing. It gives kind of a negative impression of like this whole genre of work and thought and activity, that makes it difficult for someone like me to engage with it. I feel frustrated by all of that, by my own kind of old person Luddite inability to use technology in a way that people that seem to be younger and or smarter than me of any age are doing. I don't. I talk to lots of people about this. I feel like I'm here to be impressed with what social science and humanities and other parts of the university or the world can do with AI, and I just have yet to see it. I'm sorry for any colleagues who might view or hear this and hear themselves in conversations they've had with me, because I ask a lot of people who are enthusiastic about this, like yourself, like other people who I really respect as scholars, as teachers, as human beings who are enthusiastic about this. I ask, like, what is it that makes it cool? What can you do with it? What are your students doing with it? How is it helping your own work? I occasionally hear cool things like what Giancarlo was just saying, where this sort of makes sense that you would use a program to do this kind of a thing. But in my own areas, I just have yet to find it, and I've genuinely tried. I'm not very good at this sort of thing anyway, but I don't see a lot of.
I
Wish I did.
I'm curious, Ben. I'm not super familiar with how much your work overlaps with GIS, but I found, at least in my experience, and this kind of also touches a bit maybe upon what Tim was saying. For me, when I'm using tools that I'm not always super familiar with, I just transitioned from ArcMap. I know I'm a dinosaur to ArcPro, um, but with that transition comes a lot of tools that have been tweaked, that have been moved. And so there are times where it's like, I know how to do this in ArcMap, but I can't use ArcMap right now. How do I do this in ArcPro?
Mm.
Right. And it gives me step-by-step instructions. And, in part, my job is to know how to interpret that data and work with the data. But also, right, it's like I might not want to spend my entire afternoon troubleshooting why a layer output isn't showing up properly because I didn't click a parameter correctly. Or if there is a parameter that I don't know how to use in a tool that I'm familiar with because it's a new feature, hey, what does this tool do? How do I use it properly? And so I think when Tim was kind of mentioning a bit about kind of music creation and other creative aspects, at least for me in my personal life, using AI to help me, save time on the kind of nitty gritty of some of the coarseness of learning a new skill and learning a new tool and helping me be a bit more creative has been really awesome. I've been using it to build a home lab for myself. But again, right, I'm going step by step and I'm saying, okay, why are we doing it? Why are we using this variable? Can we do this in a different way? And I have been caught up in times where, okay, maybe that wasn't the best approach. And I should have asked a better question, right? But so it depends.
I really like that. I'll be back in 2 seconds. I'm gonna grab something from the shelf.
Uh,
Oh, this is very convenient, Ben.
I listened
Very
to this
convenient.
conversation with Cory Doctorow recently, and I
Uh,
think he would largely agree with Giancarlo and with Ben, right? I think he is quite familiar with all the judicious and productive uses, but he's not hopeful that the use will be judicious at large. He's not hopeful for this at all. And his I mean he's a smart guy, I would say, uh, and knowledgeable about how to use these things both. And he's quite skeptical about it. And what I heard him saying is that the quality is going to decrease for whatever it is. The quality is going to decrease. Uh, in human geography, if the quality decreases, how does the world change? I mean, the world changes for human geographers, right? For the editors of human geography, the world changes, and they don't like the new world. But for the rest of us, how does it change? I don't know. But Cory Doctorow's example, though, was using AI to read medical scans to detect cancer. This is a huge app, but uh, it still requires a human to check the work. Right. But then you're going to fire all the humans who are doing all this work. And then the people who check are going to retire. And no one will be in this field. No one will know how to do it. And people going to die because the AI is not going to read their medical scan correctly. So the quality is going to go down. And in some applications, people going to die. So. Yeah,
I,
I
I,
think
Pat, can I just ask you to stop
yeah,
sharing that
yeah,
screen for a second? I was distracted
yeah,
by my
sure.
own inability to use Zoom. How do I make the people bigger? Oh, right, it's because Pat's sharing. Okay. There we go. Now we got a nice four panel there. Um, I went to get this book, mapping it out, because I worked for the person who wrote this for a couple of years in graduate school when I first started grad school, and I was chronically underprepared. This is Mark Monmonier, one of the world's preeminent cartographers and historians of cartography, digital and otherwise. And Mark teaches or taught these courses at Syracuse for undergraduate and graduate students in map design and interpretation. They are foundational courses. Very few geography programs, I think, anymore teach classes like that, and they're super valuable. We have one here that's sort of like this. But the way that Mark teaches cartographic design is super rules based. There are visual variables, they can be measured. There are things that you sort of have to get right. And we would do these critiques where students would bring in their work, some of it good, some of it bad, and just go through like a series of things. Are the lines crossing where they shouldn't? Is this like the appropriate size? Have they oriented this correctly? Those kinds of critiques of a map, to return to Giancarlo's question about GIS, it strikes me could be very easily produced by even a low quality AI model, right? It could tell you, no, you've messed up the lines, right? These things are too close together, because you just give it the rules for how to put visual variables together in a compelling presentation, and it can just tell you you've violated the rules or no, you haven't violated the rules. It can't really tell
By
you how
the
to
way,
make a good
that does
map.
sound like cancer. Sorry, Ben. I just wanted
Yeah, yeah.
to. It sounds a little like cancer to me. I don't know all about cancer detection, but isn't this just like lines? Anyway, I don't know. Okay, but sorry, Ben. Go on.
Cancer, not cancer. Yeah.
Well, isn't it kind of like that? Isn't it a geometric? Anyway,
But if
yeah,
making maps is just detecting cancer or not cancer, yes. But if making maps has anything more to it than that, I don't know what an AI model does for you as a student, as a researcher, as anyone else when you try to make a map. I don't know.
I I mean, like when Giancarlo talks about
We might have just lost Patrick for a moment there.
Sure did.
yeah.
Pat ran out of tokens.
sorry, I
There
ran out
he
of tokens.
goes.
Sorry. My VPN. But when Giancarlo talks about switching GIS models on the fly, I'm reminded of like people who would train me in statistics who would be using these like very antiquated statistical software packages that did have the same capabilities of the things that I was trained on. Like I was trained on R and they would be trained on something older. And then just would like live their whole careers on those old software packages. And not only that, they would teach their students on those packages. And this, you would just like lock in for generations on this like suboptimal tool. And, you know, like Giancarlo, like I found the same thing. Like, so I was trained on R, but then like there's all this functionality in Python, and I know Tim, you use Python, and like AI just makes this translation R to Python just completely trivial. It's as though I know Python.
Yeah. It's just, anymore, these are the same tool.
Okay, so like I do feel like, and I'm sure you can confirm, Giancarlo. Giancarlo, you're kind of like the swing member of this jury
Swing
somehow.
vote.
But like you're doing
Ohio.
so much more stuff than you used to or than you would be able to do. You're just like way more productive, way more powerful, if only because there's like 10% of your workflow that you're doing way better. I mean, right? Or I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Absolutely. And kind of going back to Ben's point, there's still artistic choices that you're making in that creative process and in that intellectual process and in that analysis process, right? How do you it's it's how do you, use it as a tool to help you transition between maybe software or tool sets that you're not as familiar with. But at the end of the day, right, you need to be the one making the decision for this is how I want to represent the data, or these are the comparisons that I want to make, and not letting the AI choose that for you, but letting it help you use the tool to make that uh, uh, presentable in a way that your audience understands it or is so that it's not unclear as to how you're trying to make your point. And again, right, like you still have sometimes, right, there are times where I've had it where I feel pretty good about something, and I've kind of checked it with AI, and then I go and I show it to somebody else, and they're like, I don't get it. I don't get this or I don't get that, right? So you still need other people in that process, right? Like it can only get you so far because it's very sycophantic. And so yeah, just being careful about how you're using it, and in the context of say Python or R, I use it to make plots for my data, and making sure that it's plotting the data correctly, because sometimes it'll strip out data that if you don't have it formatted right, and just check you have to check everything,
Yeah.
but it is very useful in transitioning it.
So,
So yeah, that's how I'm still staying in limbo. It's I'm still not giving you a definite answer.
repeatedly, you've talked about the need to check things, and then we meet undergraduates who their interaction with this technology is like before they learned any skills. So how
Yes.
are they even able to check?
Yeah, and part of the issue, right, is when you haven't done it yourself yet. That's part of kind of why I made a point where it's like you do have to wrestle with the text and how you are phrasing things when you're actually sitting down to write. But if I didn't have the foundational knowledge that I had, would I have spotted the fact that what the AI just told me was wrong? Or if I didn't have the you know the knowledge that I need to go and double check, okay, here's something that I might have missed in the literature. The only way that I knew that I might have missed it in the literature was because I had read the literature, right, and what I felt to be complete. um, and so you just I keep saying that you have to check it, but yeah, again, how do you get students to that point when they are not used to doing that whatsoever at this point anymore? um,
I think
I know for
that's oh, sorry, man.
Well, I know that for some of my classes, I'm a little bit insulated from it because we do stuff that AI has not been able to automate yet, like field mapping. But when I ask them for a report on what they saw, they might write down a few notes and then have that expanded upon AI. If they are doing it, I haven't caught them explicitly yet, but I'm sure it's happened and I've missed it. Um, Sorry, Ben, what were you going to say?
No, no, I'm sorry I interrupted. I was just going to say, I think this is part of what those editors are after in that statement is that there's an earnedness to
Sure.
knowledge that is lost if
Mm.
you skip that step. I think that's true, especially for folks who have not acquired these skills. Of course, that's obvious. So in the
Mm.
case of many of our students, for instance, but I think that's true regardless, right? It doesn't matter how old or experienced you are. Like if you haven't earned this knowledge, there's something missing in that step. If you haven't taken the time that it would take to do this thing without the assistance of something that can just do it for you, I think there's something real that's lost in that.
Aren't there? It seems like there's two kind of complexions to that, Ben. And the first is like a sort of integrity one, like earned as in, do you deserve something?
Yeah.
And this is a tone that I get in this editorial. And then the other is like what Giancarlo is talking about, where it's like, are you able to responsibly use this technology because you can judge it, you can restrain it, judge
Mm.
good and bad outputs. Do you mean
Mm.
do you mean it in both senses? Like, is
Mm.
this kind of like uh, professional cycling where it only really counts if you do it yourself, or is this something different?
The answer is yes. Like I mean it in both senses. I hope that I lean much more heavily on the utility one and not the deservingness, not the merit side of that.
Mm.
I think that the merit side is an important conversation. Like in professional cycling, there are rules, and when you violate them and you're caught doing so, you lose your medals. And I don't have a huge problem with that. I think it's important to revisit the rules a lot and ask what the rules are there for, and if the rules should be changed. I think that's super, super important, much more so in this case than in cycling per se. But the other side is really, really important. I think the thing that's lost that I care more about when you skip steps because AI is doing stuff for you is that there's a utility that's lost. You're not able to do the checking like Giancarlo was talking about. You lose the ability, I think, to, or you don't ever acquire the ability. I mean, both I think make sense to come up with new ideas, to create these kind of minor variations on things that are not just like something generated by a predictive model, but something that a human being would genuinely ask or be curious about.
And this is the people dying of cancer thing that Tim's talking about. I wonder though, like I can see a paradigm, like a completely transformed educational paradigm, where instead of training like independent experts in something, we're training people who can check AI. But even saying that, to return to what Tim was talking about at the beginning, seems to like seed a lot of like the like autonomy, the whatever that we seem to think it's all about to begin with. Like if we're just checkers, then is it even worth it anymore to like be in this field or something? I feel like there is a path forward, but like what that implies about our role is just so intimidating to us that like we don't even entertain it, even though like pedagogically I think that's a way you can do this, where it's like, let's become really good checkers so no one dies of cancer.
So
Go ahead,
I
Tim.
think when it comes to the classroom, what we end up doing and what me and my colleagues and what I heard Ben saying is so frustrating is it's impossible to police the work, so we just judge its quality. So a lot of times, just just giving the essay prompt to a language model and then giving me the essay, that essay is poor, right? Even with the best models, that essay is always poor. So then we read this poor essay and we say, this essay is poor. This essay is poor for reason A, B, and C. It's very frustrating for us because it's clear that we're not helping anyone become a better writer or a better thinker. All we're doing is saying, oh, however you're approaching acquiring these skills is wrong. But we can't even say, oh, you had a good idea here. It would be better if you did that. Oh, this is a nice idea. It doesn't really come across. What were you really trying to say? Those skills that we really want our students to have, that they're not going to have. So I'm very frustrated with it. I really think we need to rethink, what are we doing here? Why are we using this tool? Why is it so uh, why is the incentive to use this tool so strong for a student? Yeah.
Actually, I think that can be translated back into the question that Pat was asking Giancarlo earlier. We're talking about Giancarlo being so much more productive as so many
Yeah.
folks are with this technology. But I think there's an assumption in there that more is good, that more stuff is better, right? More papers, more essays, more things that AI can help us generate more quickly. Why is that a good thing? I mean, the editors of this statement are partly responding to like this massive flood of papers across all disciplines that are suddenly pouring in as if there's just like a tenfold increase in the number of academics overnight. Why is that productivity a good thing? I'm not confident that it is.
It's not. It's not. I mean, I wish it would do my laundry for me. Where are the robots? Where are the robots, right? So,
But
As
I
well,
mean,
right? It makes it challenging for us to then sift through the noise as well, and it slows that process down because
mm.
they're and in some sense, right? Depending on your perspective, right? It also can stifle progress if your reviewer finds an obscure article that says something that was maybe published that is maybe true for the data set that they analyze, but maybe when in a broader context is not necessarily broadly applicable in your field. And they use that as a way to maybe disagree with your argument for reasons that are not entirely justified, right? But and it could be an honest mistake, right? It could be that was something that they read, and it doesn't mean that data in that context isn't accurate. But when you take it into a broader picture, how do you compare that? And especially in a peer review process, how do you then kind of make sure that by cherry picking those examples and using them in your review process, make sure that that's still a fair review.
this is like a red herring problem and not like a hallucination. Like it's like
Yeah,
it's subtly
Mm.
different.
yeah.
I mean, but then sometimes like don't things that seem like red herrings, like because of just the nature of like radical innovations, like some things that seem kind of weird can lead to like bigger breakthroughs. And
Absolutely right, and some of the data that I even work with, right? It's like I have stuff that looks weird, and I'm struggling to explain it in some cases. Um, but as well, right? It's like, yeah, how do I bring that into a broader context and make sure in my writing as well that I also communicate that okay, this is the problem with this data, and we're still trying to understand how this relationship between these systems work. Um, and emphasize that so that doesn't maybe get misinterpreted and then more broadly applied in a way that is maybe inappropriate. But right, if you have an increasing volume of noise like these editors are talking about um, in their statement, if an increasing volume of noise, then that creates an increasing amount of material that we have to sift through to try to understand how our fields are changing and how we're supposed to be interpreting maybe the data that we have and the things that we're thinking about. Um, it creates a new complication as well.
Mm.
I mean, it's fascinating because like I feel like there's no question that there's more shit papers being submitted to journals because of AI, more AI slop. I think that's without question. But I think it's almost equally without question that like at the 90th percentile of quality, there's just more great papers. And this is because it's too early for the like, you know, Armageddon that Tim was describing to have set in where people don't know how to exercise judgment. Like we have a generation or a couple generations of scientists or social scientists who are trained to be discerning and then also get the power of this technology. So like there have to be more good papers too. And so like going back to like
Are
Ben,
the good papers growing faster than the bad ones? I'm sure the good papers are growing. I'm sure you're right. I'm
maybe not.
sure like the AI in the hands of the best researchers is increasing the quality and quantity of their research. No doubt.
But going back to like Ben's question, like what do we make of the fact that there's just more really good papers out there? Probably. Like just taking Giancarlo again as a kind of like case in point, like top researcher, top young researcher. He's just doing more. He's writing more papers and he's making those papers better because he's got access to these tools.
I think in the field of mathematics right now, that's kind of definitely being rocked a bit by AI. There have been quite a few seemingly really large steps forward in that field as a result of using AI to revisit stuff that was published a while ago and kind of look at something from a first principles perspective that I think a lot of the people in that field are finding useful. I say this as someone who is not a mathematician. um, so and Tim might be able to speak more to that effect.
No,
But
no, no. I mean, there's all these results that they're saying that AI found these results, but
I think as well, right?
this is I
It's a
think this is
collaboration.
burying a lot of the process. I know that there was a really clever mathematician involved.
And so this is kind of maybe something
Yeah.
that I wanted to build on, kind of what Patrick was maybe talking about, or alluded to earlier, and I think that Tim, you saying that is definitely a good asterisk, to that. Is that, in some sense we almost kind of might become more of a, instead of like a facilitator or a checker, maybe more of like a collaborator, where I might say, okay, we got this paper and I have questions, um, about, how new processes work based on the findings that I have from this paper. I can identify new places and work with the AI to help me optimize a way to sample a region if I'm looking at something, and help with the logistics side of it. AI can't help me in the field, right? Like Tim said, we don't have the robots. And in a sense, I think specifically in geology, where I do field work, and I have to go out, my understanding of the broader systems is something that I can't translate well into AI, when I'm actually standing there in the field. It might be able to aggregate a lot of data that I might not be able to in my head, in a different way. But when it comes down to actually like subtle things that I'm noticing in the field, it's not necessarily at that point yet. But so then it becomes like my knowledge in a way that I can't be supported by AI is then going to help me collaborate with it as I plan my research, as I collect data, as I sift through and format stuff, to just kind of help it along the process. But that's not applicable to all fields. Not all fields require that field work. And to an extent, I think biology as well is another field where that's going to be a much more collaborative process. Will that be the case everywhere? If in mathematics, right, it's always with somebody else. It's always somebody, some very smart individual who is talking with the AI, who is discussing those ideas, but they're also somebody who has a good foundation in the knowledge.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very clever. I don't, the other metaphor that Cory Doctorow made was about centaurs. So a centaur is a metaphor of a human that is assisted by a machine. Uh, but he talks about reverse centaur. This machine is assisted by a human, right? Like the it's a horse's head and a human's legs, right? Is backwards. And I think the reverse centaur is a bad idea. It's bad for humans and it's bad for the quality of the work. Uh, and and so I think mostly Giancarlo and Patrick are describing the centaurs of the world. Like, look at
Hmm.
what they can do. But then the kids, the kids these days, they're not centaurs
But
It's
like,
it's
because the
sorry, Ben.
brain is the horse. Anyway, go on.
just a quick note about these different metaphors. I think they work differently in different parts of the academic exercise and academic life. So in fields where like the PI and lab model is dominant, this idea of like collaborating with AI, with AI agents or whatever, makes way more sense because this is how labs kind of work already, right? Someone's got kind of an idea and then they assign that to a postdoc or to a junior researcher. Please go figure out like how to acquire this data or how to make these two things commensurable so we can do this analysis. I'll go schmooze with people and get the money, or I'll make sure we get the permissions or whatever, and then you do the actual work. This sort of makes sense in fields where that's not the case, where it's like one person in the dark stumbling around trying to find some truth somewhere. This seems like a much more dangerous thing. It doesn't seem to work the same way at all. Like
Perhaps
that kind
so.
of collaboration only produces your reverse centaurs, I think, Tim.
Mm. Hey guys,
So
I think I need to bounce. I'm so tired.
no, this is we've had a good like hour
Uh,
conversation here, but
Give them some
maybe
tokens.
we can we can all just end by saying some new idea they have from this conversation or new question. I just came up with that. I just stumped a man for that one.
I see you typing with a hand there. You got a little AI agent.
No, this is just my fidget cube.
What do I ask them next?
Oh.
I mean, I'll start. One question I have of you guys, but it's really a question I have of myself, is like, like I probably have the same complaints as all of you, that I'm not, or that students aren't writing as well because of AI. But then like that should suggest that I should be teaching writing more now.
Yeah.
Than I have. Like, it's up to me to fill in that.
Yeah.
And somehow I don't teach writing very much now. I didn't teach writing very much before. And it's like, who is responsible for people losing these skills? It's literally fucking me. Right? Like, so I'm going to be thinking about how I can integrate, and it probably is going to be more of this like reverse centaur mode, because I think that's going to be the most accessible and relevant to these students. But how can I teach writing in some form so that these skills don't get lost? Ooh, I like this reaction from Ben.
I don't know, man. I don't know. You're talking about like a really high order skill, like the kind of writing that you should be teaching, that you and I and the others in this conversation should be teaching to university students, is not like how to construct a sentence, right? It's how to reach people, how to reach an audience, how to like draw out an idea and fully explain it, how to give something color and flavor. This is a kind of writing that like human geography requires. But it's not something you can teach to people who don't know how to construct a sentence, right? The kind of writing that is being lost is the lower order stuff. That's the steps that are being skipped when students.
It's the high school teacher's fault.
It's way before that.
I mean, this is a very cynical view, Ben, and I'm sure you know. Okay. So there's nothing. Okay, there's
nothing you and I can do to teach these writing skills. No, I don't think so. At the university level,
not at the scale, right? And a Common Core course, you have 120 students, right? Maybe if I had 5, you could teach those 5.
And like in an advanced course in my own field as well. Like if you had people in a seminar for 3 hours once a week, and they read a book together and they all write like a critical essay about this book, and then you read each other's work, that's still possible. I think you're right at that scale, but you're also talking about a different kind of writing at that point. I want that to be true, Pat, but I think that's a horrifyingly losing battle.
You could train an AI to write a software program to prompt students with questions, and they can assess the better sentences.
Maybe something that I something that I remember doing in high school, secondary school, was that in part of my writing development for English class, we had to write an essay, a draft, right? This was not our final submission. We would submit that to 2 copies, one to our teacher and the other to another student in the class, or even sometimes a group of students, right? So I might print out 5 copies, one for my teacher and 4 for my peers, and I would receive 4 essays. I would have a day or two to read those. That would be my homework. And then I would have to come in and give people specific feedback and ask them why they made that choice. Why did you say this here? If you're sitting around your peers and you can't explain your own work or why you made that decision, I think that that's a way to kind of almost socially engineer a situation where somebody can't escape that discussion, right? And can't sidestep that responsibility. You submitted that work as yours, and someone is asking you about why you said something.
Yeah.
That's a very different environment. and they might not even be confrontational, right? It's not necessarily that they're criticizing you, but they're asking you, oh, like I really thought that you described that in an interesting way. Why did you say that? The first time it happens, I'm sure that some of the students will be like, I don't know, right? And if their peers are reviewing them, then that's not a good response, and their grade might reflect that, and they might then learn so that for the second time or third time, okay, I actually do have to take this more seriously. I have to put my own thoughts into it. I will say though, I think that in this environment, right, research happens in our native language, and so I do think that for a lot of people who do not speak English natively, since research is so often communicated in English, it is really helpful for minorities in our field who are trying to communicate their ideas, but maybe don't have all the tools that we have. And so, how do you balance all of those things, keeping that creative aspect of it and that responsibility and accountability, while also like supporting people who might still need to use these tools to work on their own, and again, not their fault, but their disadvantages.
I think that's great. I mean, tongue in cheek again. It's like, we let the AI's grade for us, and then we make the other students shame and regulate, and then we go walk all the way to the bank. Anyway, there's some really good points there. And then like the language thing is obviously, I mean, because language is the thing that AI is the best at. It's a language model, and our students are just like doing so much better with it. But then I guess to like Ben's concerns and some other concerns, like maybe they're writing with it, but then they're speaking even more poorly because they don't know it. Ben, any last words? I mean, you didn't like mine. You sure didn't like mine.
No, I loved it. I also hated it.
I'm joking.
My one thing was going to be about your essay, which we did not talk about, which I found to be much more interesting and exciting than this statement by these editors, which, although I completely understand it and largely agree with it, is sort of sad, and has kind of a frustrating tone.
They were sad, and it was sad.
Yeah. Your essay is quite hopeful. I maybe another night on this show, Hear the Voice of the New Territories, we'll get to discuss that piece. I think it has a lot of exciting stuff in it. I have lots of questions and critiques to make.
Well, I look forward to that.
Yeah.
Tim, anything? And thank you so much, Ben. So generous with your time, so generous with that. Tim, you got anything else? Dean of the Guaylos sending us off?
Oh, yeah. It's very interesting to talk to you guys about this. I think maybe 4 years ago or so, like I wasn't so worried about AI because it was bad, and it's better now, and I'm way more worried about it. So I think what I've been learning is really that the quality of the AI to do the thing that we thought only a human could do is the most terrifying, because I think we will lose the ability to critique work, and this is really what I'm scared of. So it's been nice to talk to you guys about it.
Yeah.
But I'm up way past my bedtime.
No. You're getting over jet lag. It's a good opportunity to release everyone. I'm really appreciative. This was a better conversation than I anticipated. It's the highest quality conversation the four of us have ever had, and we've had numerous. I mean, no, just say it. Like I was
about to be hurt, but then we
went high with this. So yeah, I'm gonna.
I didn't use any AI to prepare my remarks. I'll just disclose that now.
No human skills were harmed in the making of this.
Yeah.
I'm gonna post and transcribe this, and I think people are gonna get something out of it. So thank you guys so much.
All right.
And
no
sorry
problem.
that the streamed itself didn't work.
Thanks for hosting, Pat. Thanks for inviting us.
This was great. Thank you guys,
Thanks for
for
being
having
brave
us on.
and doing this kind of wild stuff also.
Yeah.
bro. All right.
All right.
See you guys soon, I think.
Yeah. All right.
See you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.